Elena's hands trembled as she clutched the court summons, the paper crumpling under her fingers like her world had 3 years ago. She stood on the courthouse steps in Maplewood, New Jersey, the autumn wind biting at her cheeks, whispering memories of a life she'd lost. Today, she wasn't just fighting for her children, she was fighting for her truth. 3 years earlier, Elena Martinez had walked away from a marriage that felt like a cage. At 35, she'd been a devoted mother to her twins, Mia and Lucas, and a dutiful wife to Daniel, a man whose love had turned possessive, suffocating her spirit. But it wasn't Daniel's controlling nature that broke her, it was Clara. Clara Bennett, the fiery, unapologetic woman who'd moved into the house across the street, and without warning unraveled Elena's carefully constructed life. Clara was everything Elena wasn't: bold, free, unafraid. At 32, she wore her auburn hair short, her green eyes sparking with defiance, and her laugh could light up the darkest corners of Elena's heart. They met at a neighborhood book club, where Clara's sharp wit and unfiltered opinions about love and freedom left Elena breathless. Over late-night coffee and stolen glances, Elena realized she wasn't just drawn to Clara's spirit, she was in love with her. It was a revelation that terrified and liberated her, a secret she buried until the day she couldn't anymore. "I can't keep pretending," Elena had whispered to Clara one evening, their hands brushing as they sat on Clara's porch swing. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine, and Clara's gaze held hers, steady and unyielding. "I'm scared, Clara. Of what this means, of what I'll lose." "You won't lose yourself," Clara had replied, her voice soft but fierce. "And I'll be here no matter what." But coming out to Daniel had been a war. He'd raged, not at her leaving, but at the idea of her loving someone else, especially Clara. "You're confused," he'd spat, his face twisted with something Elena couldn't name. "You're throwing away our family for her?" His words cut, but it was his actions that shattered her. When Elena moved out, Daniel used his wealth and influence to block her from seeing Mia and Lucas, claiming she was unstable. The courts, swayed by his charm and lies, granted him full custody, leaving Elena with nothing but supervised visits and a broken heart. Now, standing outside the courthouse, Elena felt Clara's hand slip into hers, grounding her. "You ready?" Clara asked, her voice a quiet anchor in the storm of Elena's nerves. "I have to be," Elena said, her brown eyes meeting Clara's green ones. "For them. For us." Inside, the courtroom was a cold, sterile battleground. Daniel sat across from them, his jaw tight, his lawyer whispering in his ear. Elena's attorney, a sharp woman named Rachel, had warned her this wouldn't be easy. Daniel's legal team had painted Elena as an unfit mother, using her newfound identity as a weapon. But Rachel had found something Daniel had hidden for years, something that could change everything. As the judge called the session to order, Elena's heart pounded. She glanced at Clara, who gave her a small, encouraging nod. This wasn't just about custody. It was about reclaiming her life, her love, and her right to be whole. The first witness was Daniel's sister, Laura, who took the stand with a nervous smile. She'd always been kind to Elena, but her loyalty to Daniel had kept her silent until now. Rachel's questions were precise, cutting through Laura's hesitation like a blade. "Ms. Martinez, did your brother ever express his feelings about Elena's relationship with Clara Bennett?" Rachel asked. Laura shifted uncomfortably. He was angry. He said he couldn't stand the thought of Elena with someone else. "And did he ever say why?" Rachel pressed. Laura's eyes darted to Daniel, then back to Rachel. He said he loved her. That he'd always loved her, and he couldn't let her go." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Elena's breath caught, her mind reeling. Daniel loved her? After everything, his control, his cruelty, his refusal to let her see their children? She looked at him, searching for the man she'd married, but all she saw was a stranger, his face pale, his eyes avoiding hers. Rachel didn't let up. Did Daniel ever admit to manipulating the custody arrangement to punish Elena? Laura hesitated, then nodded. "He told me he'd do whatever it took to keep her from moving on. He thought, if he kept the kids, she'd come back to him." The revelation hit Elena like a tidal wave. All this time, she thought Daniel's actions were about protecting Mia and Lucas. But it was about control, about his obsession with a love she could never return. Clara squeezed her hand under the table, her touch a reminder that Elena wasn't alone. The judge's gavel fell, calling for a recess. Elena felt the weight of the moment settle into her bones. This was only the beginning, but for the first time in years, she felt a flicker of hope. She wasn't just fighting for her children, she was fighting for the right to love Clara openly, without shame or fear. As they stepped outside for the break, Clara pulled Elena into a quiet corner of the courthouse hallway. "You're doing this," Clara whispered, her voice thick with pride. "You're stronger than you know." Elena's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. "I couldn't do it without you." Clara's lips brushed against Elena's forehead, a soft promise. "You'll never have to." The fight was far from over, but in that moment Elena knew one thing for certain. No matter what the court decided, she and Clara would face it together. The courtroom felt smaller as the session resumed, the air thick with tension. Elena's heart raced, her fingers twisting the edge of her scarf as she sat beside Clara. Every word spoken here could bring her closer to Mia and Lucas or tear them further apart. Rachel called the next witness, a social worker named Karen who'd overseen Elena's supervised visits with the twins. Karen's testimony was measured but damning. "Ms. Martinez has always been attentive and loving with Mia and Lucas," she said, her voice steady. "The children light up when they're with her. There's no evidence of instability or neglect." Elena's chest ached at the thought of her children, Lucas's shy grin, Mia's endless questions. She hadn't seen them in months, not since Daniel had convinced a judge to suspend even her supervised visits. His lawyers had spun a narrative of Elena as a confused woman who'd abandoned her family for a lifestyle choice. The truth that she'd left to save herself, to live honestly, was buried under their accusations. Rachel's next move was bold. She introduced a series of text messages Daniel had sent to Elena after their separation, messages he deleted from his own phone but hadn't counted on Elena saving. The screen in the courtroom displayed them, each word a knife. "I can't believe you choose her over us," one read. "You'll regret this, Elena. I'll make sure of it." Another, "The kids don't need a mother who's lost her way. Come back and we can fix this." The messages painted a picture of a man unraveling, his love twisted into something dark and controlling. Elena remembered the nights she'd read those texts, her hands shaking, Clara holding her as she cried. She'd kept them not out of spite, but as a reminder of why she'd left. Daniel's lawyer, a slick man named Gregory, tried to spin the texts as a concerned father's plea. "My client was worried about his children's well-being," he argued. Ms. Martinez's sudden decision to leave her family was traumatic for everyone. But Rachel was relentless. She called a therapist, Dr. Patel, who'd counseled Elena during the divorce. Dr. Patel's testimony was a lifeline. Elena was grappling with her identity, but she was clear-headed and committed to her children, she said. Her decision to leave was about authenticity, not abandonment. She's shown remarkable resilience. Clara leaned closer to Elena, whispering, "You're winning this. I can feel it." Elena wanted to believe her, but doubt gnawed at her. What if the judge saw her the way Daniel died, a woman who'd broken her vows, who'd chosen love over duty? She glanced at Clara, whose green eyes burned with quiet strength. Clara had been her rock, her safe harbor, but even she couldn't shield Elena from the fear of losing her children forever. The day's session ended with no ruling, the judge's face unreadable as she adjourned the court. Elena felt drained, her body heavy with the weight of waiting. Outside, the autumn leaves swirled around them, and Clara pulled her into a hug. "You're doing everything you can," she said. "Mia and Lucas will know that." Elena nodded, her throat tight. "I just want them to know I love them. That I never stopped." That night, in Clara's small apartment, they sat on the couch, a blanket draped over their shoulders. Clara traced circles on Elena's palm, a silent comfort. "Tell me about them," Clara said softly. "The twins. What's something they love?" Elena smiled, her heart warming at the memory. "Lucas loves building things, Legos, forts, anything he can stack. Mia, she's obsessed with stories. She'd make me read her the same book every night, then ask a million questions about the characters." Clara's eyes softened. "They sound like you. Curious, creative." Elena's smile faded. "What if I never get to see them grow up, Clara? What if Daniel wins?" "He won't," Clara said fiercely. Not after today. The truth is coming out, Elena. You're not the villain he's made you out to be. But as Elena lay awake that night, Clara's steady breathing beside her, she couldn't shake the fear. Daniel's love, warped as it was, had fueled his campaign to keep her from the twins. What else was he hiding? What else would the court reveal? The next day, Rachel dropped a bombshell. She'd uncovered financial records showing Daniel had bribed a court official to sway the initial custody ruling. The evidence was a damning trail of payments leading to a clerk who'd conveniently lost Elena's petitions for visitation. The courtroom buzzed with shock, and even Daniel's lawyer faltered. Elena's hopes surged, but so did her anger. Daniel hadn't just taken her children, manipulated the system to punish her for loving Clara. As the judge called for another witness, Elena braced herself. The fight was far from over, but she was ready to face whatever came next, with Clara by her side. The courtroom was a pressure cooker. Every word a spark that could ignite Elena's future or burn it to ash. She sat rigid, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, as Rachel presented the financial records. The evidence of Daniel's bribe was meticulous bank transfers, encrypted emails, a paper trail he'd thought was buried. The judge's face, usually a mask of neutrality, tightened with disapproval. Daniel's lawyer scrambled, arguing the payments were consulting fees for unrelated work. But the clerk, now under oath, crumbled under Rachel's questioning. Mr. Martinez offered me money to prioritize his filings, the clerk admitted, his voice shaking. He said it was to protect his kids. Elena's stomach churned. Protect them? Daniel had torn her children from her, not out of love for them, but to punish her. She glanced at him, his face flushed, his hands gripping the table. For a moment, she pitied him, a man so consumed by his own desires that he'd destroy his family to keep her tethered. Clara's hand found hers under the table, a quiet reminder of why she was fighting. Elena thought of the first time they'd kissed, in Clara's backyard under a starlit sky, the world falling away until it was just them. That moment had given her the courage to leave Daniel, to choose herself. Now, it fueled her resolve to reclaim her children. Rachel called Elena to the stand. The weight of every eye in the room pressed against her as she swore the oath. Her voice trembled at first, but Clara's steady gaze anchored her. Ms. Martinez, Rachel began, can you describe your relationship with your children before the separation? Elena's throat tightened, but she spoke clearly. Mia and Lucas were my everything. I read to them every night, helped with their homework, took them to soccer practice. When I left Daniel, I never intended to leave them. I fought to see them, but he made it impossible. And why did you leave your marriage? Rachel asked, her tone gentle but deliberate. Elena took a deep breath, her eyes finding Clara's. Because I was living a lie. I was in love with Clara and I couldn't keep pretending to be someone I wasn't. I wanted to be honest for myself, for my kids. The courtroom was silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Rachel nodded, then turned to the judge. Your Honor, Ms. Martinez's identity has been used against her to question her fitness as a mother. But her love for her children has never wavered. Daniel's lawyer cross-examined her, his questions sharp and accusatory. You admit you left your family for Ms. Bennett. How can you claim to prioritize your children? Elena's voice steadied, her anger rising. I left a marriage that was suffocating me. I never stopped being their mother. Daniel took them from me because he couldn't accept who I am. The judge's pen scratched across her notepad, her expression unreadable. Elena stepped down, her legs shaky but her heart lighter. She'd spoken her truth, and no one could take that from her. That night, Clara cooked dinner in her tiny kitchen, the smell of garlic and rosemary filling the air. They ate in comfortable silence, but Elena's mind was restless. What if it's not enough? She asked, pushing her plate away. What if the judge thinks I'm unfit because of us? Clara set down her fork, her green eyes fierce. Elena, you're an incredible mother. The judge saw that today. And if she can't, we'll keep fighting. I'm not going anywhere. Elena reached for Clara's hand, their fingers intertwining. I don't deserve you, she whispered. Clara smiled, soft and sure. You deserve everything. The next day, the court heard from Mia and Lucas's teacher, who testified about their struggles since Elena's absence. They missed their mother, she said. They talk about her constantly. Lucas draws pictures of their old house with Elena in them. Mia asks when she'll come back. Elena's eyes burned with tears. Clara squeezed her shoulder, her touch a lifeline. The teacher's words were a small victory, but the real battle came when Daniel took the stand. Under Rachel's questioning, he unraveled. Yes, I loved Elena, he admitted, his voice raw. I thought if I kept the kids, she'd realize what she was throwing away. I didn't want to lose her. The admission was a confession, a crack in his carefully constructed facade. Elena felt a strange mix of anger and sorrow. Daniel's love had been a chain, not a gift. But as the session ended, the judge's words echoed in her mind. We'll reconvene tomorrow for the final arguments. Elena knew the truth was out, but the outcome was still uncertain. She clung to Clara's hand as they left the courthouse, the autumn wind carrying both hope and fear. The final day in court dawned gray and heavy, the sky over Maplewood mirroring Elena's restless heart. She stood outside the courthouse, Clara's arm around her waist, the weight of the moment pressing against her chest. Today, the judge would decide whether she'd be reunited with Mia and Lucas or lose them forever. Inside, Rachel delivered her closing argument with quiet fire. Your Honor, Elena Martinez is a devoted mother who has been unjustly separated from her children. Daniel Martinez's actions bribing officials, manipulating the system were not about protecting Mia and Lucas, but about controlling Elena. Her love for Clara Bennett does not diminish her capacity to parent. It strengthens it, because it's rooted in authenticity. Daniel's lawyer countered, his voice smooth but desperate. Mr. Martinez acted out of concern for his children's stability. Ms. Martinez's choices disrupted their lives. He deserves to retain custody. The judge listened, her face a mask of contemplation. Elena's pulse thundered in her ears, Clara's hand steady in hers. When the judge finally spoke, her voice was calm but firm. This court has seen evidence of manipulation and deceit. Mr. Martinez's actions were not in the best interest of the children but driven by personal motives. Ms. Martinez, however, has demonstrated unwavering commitment to her children's well-being. Elena's breath caught, hope surging like a tide. The judge continued, I am granting Elena Martinez joint custody of Mia and Lucas, effective immediately. Supervised visits will resume this week, with a plan for full reintegration. Tears streamed down Elena's face, a sob breaking free. Clara pulled her into a tight embrace, whispering, You did it. You're getting them back. Daniel's face was ashen, his eyes fixed on the floor. For a moment Elena wanted to hate him, but all she felt was relief. The chains he'd forged were breaking, and she was free to be the mother and the woman she'd always been. That evening, Elena and Clara drove to the social worker's office for Elena's first supervised visit in months. When Mia and Lucas ran into the room, their faces lit with joy, Elena dropped to her knees, pulling them into her arms. Mommy! Mia cried, her small hands clutching Elena's scarf. Lucas buried his face in her shoulder, his quiet strength a mirror of her own. I missed you so much, Elena whispered, her voice breaking. I'm never leaving you again. Clara stood back, her eyes shining with tears and pride. The social worker watched, her expression soft, as Elena played with the twins, listening to their stories, their laughter filling the room like music. Later, as they left the office, Mia slipped her hand into Clara's. Are you Mommy's friend? She asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. Clara knelt, her smile warm. I'm Clara. And yeah, I'm your mom's friend. Her very special friend. Lucas tugged at Elena's hand. Can Clara come to our house? Elena laughed, her heart full. She can come whenever you want. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Elena and Clara worked to rebuild a routine with the twins, balancing visits with school and soccer practice. Daniel, stripped of his control, agreed to co-parenting terms, his demeanor subdued. Elena didn't trust him fully, but she focused on what mattered. Her children, her love, her future. One evening as the twins slept in Clara's guest room, Elena and Clara sat on the porch, the autumn air crisp and sweet. I was so scared, Elena admitted, her voice soft. I thought I'd lose everything. Clara took her hand, her thumb brushing over Elena's knuckles. You fought for what matters. And you won. Elena leaned against her, their shoulders touching. We won, she corrected. This is our family now. Clara's smile was radiant, her green eyes catching the moonlight. "Yeah," she said. "Our family." The stars above Maplewood glittered, a quiet promise of new beginnings. Elena felt whole, her heart no longer torn between who she was and who she loved. The fight had been brutal, but it had led her here to Clara, to her children, to a life she'd never dared to dream. Winter settled over Maplewood, blanketing the town in quiet snow. Elena stood in her new apartment's kitchen, stirring hot cocoa for Mia and Lucas, who were sprawled on the living room floor, building a Lego castle with Clara. The twins' laughter echoed, a sound Elena had once feared she'd never hear again. This was home now, not just the apartment, but the life she was building with Clara and her children. The custody battle had left scars, but it had also forged something unbreakable. Elena had joint custody, and the twins spent half their time with her, their days filled with love and stability. Daniel had retreated, his influence diminished by the court's ruling and his own admissions. He was still their father, and Elena worked to keep their relationship civil for the twins' sake, but she no longer feared him. Clara had become a constant in their lives, her presence a bridge between Elena's past and future. Mia adored Clara's storytelling, begging her to invent new tales each night. Lucas, quieter but just as attached, followed Clara around, asking her to fix his broken toys or teach him how to kick a soccer ball. Clara embraced them with the same fierce love she gave Elena, and it filled Elena's heart to see her children so happy. One snowy afternoon, as the twins played outside, Elena and Clara sat by the window sipping coffee. "I never thought I'd get here," Elena said, her voice soft. "A year ago I was so lost. I thought loving you meant losing them." Clara reached for her hand, her touch warm and steady. "You were never lost. You were finding your way." Elena smiled, her eyes tracing Clara's face, the freckles across her nose, the spark in her green eyes. "I want to marry you," she said suddenly, the words spilling out before she could stop them. "Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. I want Thysis, the kids, all of it'll be forever." Clara's breath caught, her smile trembling with emotion. "Elena Martinez, are you proposing to me over coffee?" "Maybe," Elena teased, her heart racing. "Is that a yes?" Clara leaned in, her lips brushing Elena's in a soft, lingering kiss. "It's a we'll get there. Together." The twins burst through the door, their cheeks pink from the cold, demanding hot cocoa and attention. Elena laughed, pulling them into a hug, while Clara joined in, tickling Lucas until he squealed. This was their life now, messy, joyful, real. Months later, at a spring festival in Maplewood, Elena and Clara walked hand in hand, Mia and Lucas running ahead, chasing balloons. The town had watched their story unfold, some with judgment, others with quiet support, but Elena no longer cared. She'd fought for her truth and won. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, Elena looked at Clara, her heart full. The court had revealed Daniel's lies, but it had also revealed Elena's strength, her love, her right to be whole. She was no longer the woman who trembled on the courthouse steps. She was Elena Martinez, mother, partner, survivor. "Thank you," she whispered to Clara, squeezing her hand. "For what?" Clara asked, her smile soft. "For seeing me. For loving me." Clara's eyes shone with tears, but her voice was steady. "Always." As Mia and Lucas ran back, tugging at their hands, Elena felt the weight of her past lift. The future was theirs, hers, Clara's, the twins, and it was beautiful. They'd face the storm and emerge stronger. A family bound not by convention but by love, fierce and unyielding. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.